hey, listen, the stuff's inside, but these guys don't want to bring it out. So I drove out here. Normally what you do is you wrap it up, you bring in the car real quick, and we're done. I get the hell out of here, right? And he said, but he wants to come in, you go inside. I was like, and I know there's more people coming in. And he doesn't know that I know that already. So I'm just like, no, dude, I don't want to meet anybody. I said, no, it's fine. I said, no. And I said, okay, what do you give me the money? And I'll get it for you. I said, no, I'm not doing it. I think what's going to happen is you're going to walk away with 3,000. I'm going to have a bigger headache to deal with to chase you and everybody else who just stole my money.
Hey, this is Matt Cox, and I'm going to be doing an interview with Ignacio Esteban, and he is a former, retired ATF agent who was undercover. He has had a really interesting life, and so check it out. I mean, honestly, I just basically start like at the beginning, like where you were born, how you grew up, and kind of like and how you got into, how did you become an ATF? Was it something you were always interested in, that sort of thing? Where were you born?
Yeah. I was born in Los Angeles, in California, but raised in South Florida, in Miami. And, I've always had some interest in law enforcement, obviously. You grew up in the same times. I was born in the 70s, and I grew up when I was younger in the 80s with Miami Vice, right? And I'm in South Florida, right? How cool you're seeing Don Johnson, you're watching the cool cars, the Ferraris, right? You're thinking, man, that is pretty cool. So that always was, always in the back of your head, and you're looking at that, but never thought I would ever do that kind of work, really. I kind of, thought it was cool, and I liked the guns, I liked the training, I liked putting down these bad guys, and the cocaine cowboys were huge back in the 80s. Well, years later, I go to college. I went actually up not far from where you're at, up to St. Louis University. It's a Catholic university, and I got my degree in political science and history. Then I come back to FIU in Miami. So now we're looking about the mid-90s, and I'm working my degree in international relations, and I was going to go to law school. I accepted to go to law school in Lansing, Michigan, Thomas Cooley. And, the farthest thing in my head, and I'm seeing the prices, how expensive law school is. And this is mid-90s. It's a lot more now, obviously. But even in the mid-90s, and I had a scholarship in college. I played tennis, number one for my school, but it was going to cost me about $30,000 a year, right? $30,000 a year, 3 years at least. You have housing, you got to get loans for all that stuff. And I'm thinking, and I know how competitive is law school. And some people are saying, man, that's a lot of money, but I already have my degree, very athletic. I was good shooting. My dad taught me how to shoot early in life. We'll go to the range, and my dad was a gun enthusiast. So I'm competent with a firearm, right? I'm athletic. And I'm thinking, wow. And I noticed internet just started, right? This is 1995. Windows came out, and I didn't use it in college, but I said, man, this is the future, right? So I got myself a computer, and I taught myself, because this is, people have said, what are you doing? What's emailing? What do you do? I got myself a Yahoo account. People, Prodigy, right? People had no idea what the stuff, what dial-up, what are you doing? And it's like, well, this is the future. And people are like, no, I don't think this is going to last. I think, no, I think this is going to be.
Listen, I was one of those guys. I was like, this is going to catch on.
People are not going to spend their time online. What are you talking about? And I was like, oh no, I think it will. Especially when I saw everybody pumping, especially you get government jobs. That's why when USA, that's one of the reasons I went on there, because USA jobs was available to look at what's opening. And I was interested in going with customs. So I applied for customs, right? They were looking for Spanish speakers, which I grew up in Miami. My parents are Spanish Cuban. Grandparents from Spain went to Cuba, and then after the Castro Revolution, they came to the United States, and they lost everything. And they have my family to start over again, and I'm fortunate enough to be in this great country, and I've done quite well within one generation. The wealth they lost in Cuba, I've done quite well in this country, and it's a very fortunate, great nation that we live in. And I talk about that in my books also. So I work on that, and I put in there, and so they need people, because in Miami International Airport, most of the flights, 85% of them come from Latin America, right? So they want the customs officials to be able to engage and speak Spanish, because it's easier to catch people who are mules, who are smuggling drugs. You got to know what you're dealing with. And I grew up in Miami, so I grew up with all the different cultures from South America, from Latin America, from Mexico, a lot of my friends. So I knew all that, and I spoke Spanish. So I put in for the jobs, right? And I got it pretty quickly with customs. So that was something where I was going to law school, and I said, this is better, because now I'm making quite a good money. I'm going to have a good pension, right? I'm in law enforcement, and I really enjoy it. It is satisfying what kind of work I'll start doing. So you start there at the airport, you get your teeth into like passport processing, and then I make one of their elite teams with customs called the contraband enforcement team. And at the time, in the 90s, in Miami, South Florida is making some of the biggest seizures in the country, right? You still have the Cali cartel, you still have the Medellin cartel, and they're still pumping a lot of drugs. And I go on like what the Mexicans are do when they take over. They're doing it the school way with cargo. They're doing it with ships. They're doing it through Florida and the Caribbean, and that's how they're getting it through to, especially in Florida. So it wasn't uncommon, after a year on the job.
So I was saying, or you're saying back then that's how they're doing it, or you're saying that's how they're doing it now?
No, back then.
Okay.
The Medellin, Cali, all those guys have collapsed, and now the Mexicans. And I've written books about how strong they've got, and they're almost more powerful than the Colombians ever were. You talk about El Chapo, El Menchos, and I'll go into that also, how strong they've become and how they've changed the game completely, and how we have to change. And I've written about that too, my experiences. So I get in there, and so I'm now in the middle of the drug war. I'm the front line, with customs.
So what do you do? I mean, what does that detail consist of?
Yeah. So Miami has a ton of cargo that comes in through Latin America, right? And also passengers, a lot of it coming in. And my job in the border, border authority is everything that comes international is subject to search, right? I don't need probable cause like I would later when I became an agent, which is a completely different game. So it was a lot easier to make seizures and make arrests, because when you come in, you have your questions, people can be searched, and you figure out what's going on right there. And with cargo side, it's everything comes in, and especially from Latin America, transitional country, it wasn't uncommon for me to see, we're going to see 850 pounds of cocaine that was coming in grouper fish that was coming from Guayaquil, Colombian drugs, going to Colombia, going to Ecuador, and then being shipped, because within 5-6 hours, it's in Miami. And the corruption was really bad in South Florida, right? At the airport, you had the ramp workers were dirty. You had the longshoremen were dirty. You had a ton of corruption. The money's overwhelming. And that stuff was never going to go where it's supposed to go. It gets ripped off, right? It has the bill lading, right, where it's supposed to go, but those stuff never go. When you got that kind of fish, when you look inside this major grouper, you get a kilo of Coke next to a block of ice. That stuff was going to get taken out. And that was not uncommon to see 600, 800 pounds coming in and get ripped off. And that's what we got. So what does that tell you? The stuff that got in? A lot.
Yeah, what's not getting caught?
A lot. And they knew that was the quickest way to get it in, because the demand back in the 80s and 90s, and still today, unfortunately, is enormous for cocaine. I always said the way to stop the cartels, if people stop using the stuff, right? If people got the treatment, the cartels are out of the drug game, right? It's over. That's it.
Yeah.
We win the war on drugs. The way we win the war on drugs, and what your audience to know, is from within. From within. But a lot of these bad countries are weaponizing cocaine, especially the Nicolas Maduros from Venezuela, right? You've got countries who are really enemies or communist enemies, and they're selling cocaine because they know that does damage to our country, their workforce, the people, their future, and everything else.
Cuba, was it Castro said it was he said the pink menace, or he said that was the best way to undermine the United States was through the importation of drugs?
Yeah, Hugo Chavez from Venezuela used to do that before he died. Yeah, from Venezuela. Cuba saw it, but Castro did not want to be called a trafficker, right? Because he saw what happened to Noriega, right? Back in the late 80s, Manuel Noriega, when he got involved, the U.S. ended up invading and bringing him over. The former president of Honduras, Hernandez, he was a big-time drug trafficker. He just got extradited to the United States. Maduro has been indicted. So
I thought I had read something about Cuba, like Castro wasn't like involved in it, but he was allowing for a period of time, he like allowed planes to land or fly through
yes.
airspace.
Yeah,
and then it caught up with him, and then he was like, okay, we're done with that.
Yeah. He didn't want to get caught up with that, but he would tolerate some things, but not on the islands, because he didn't want to give the United States a chance to bring him in, because it happens to world leaders all over. They get involved in the drug game. It's a conspiracy against us in the United States, and we've had the case law, and we extradite these guys and bring them over. And El Chapo is a perfect example of what happened to him when he finally got extradited, and now he is in the Supermax in Florence, Colorado. And so he was a very, very powerful guy, and not so much. So I'm encountering that fascinating view, frontline, right? I'm meeting a lot of people because we make a lot of seizures. So I'm networking with the FBI. I'm networking with ATF, especially DEA, Customs, at a time where Department of Treasury, and after 9/11, everything changes, right? Everybody changes. ATF will end up going to Justice. Customs will go Department of Homeland Security. It would leave Treasury. So a lot of things change. We're making a lot of good seizures. Ones that were kind of strange were like people who would swallow, like the pellets.
Yeah.
The swallowers. We would get a ton of that. I mean, it is really, I mean, we got a lot, but a lot also got through. And it's really sad because some of these people were peasants, right? They would get used, or they say, if you don't do it, and these are the cartels, they go in these villages, right? And they pretty much force these guys to do it, or they're going to hurt your family, kill the family. Some got paid. I mean, I found it, the guys who went, let's say, if you were from, Miami, or you were from Puerto Rico, and you end up flying to, Cali or something like that, and you stay there for 3-4 days. Like, why are you there? What was your purpose of your trip, right? And the purpose of your trip was to swallow these pellets. And I got really good at it. I mean, you could easily have 2 or 3 pounds of cocaine in you, or heroin. Heroin really started picking up in the 90s with the Colombians, right? And that's a lot of money, a lot of dope in there. But the problem with that is something, if it leaks, you'll be dead on your plane. It's so pure, you're not going to survive. So we get calls a lot. People are dead on arrival. They're on the planes. You got to clear them up. It's not easy to pass either. So if you can't pass this stuff fast enough, even when we catch them, we would have to take them to the hospital and MIA and give them these laxatives, and it still takes a while to pass it. These cartel members, if you make it and you're in one of these hotels, which happens all the time, you can't pass the stuff fast enough, they'll put a bullet in your head, they'll gut you, and they'll take the stuff out. So a lot of times they were lucky that we caught them, because it was not good stuff for them. And even then, sometimes they still need surgery. This stuff wouldn't come out. I mean, it's really, it's risky, it's sad, it's horrible to see these people. And this is something I'm seeing firsthand. A guy home with that say, man, this is the war on drugs. This is how it looks like. This is what's going on. It becomes normal and natural. You feel bad because you're being used, right? And
Well, it's much sexier from Don Johnson's point of view. For the Don Johnson point of view, it's much sexier. He's got the Ferrari.
You got the Ferrari, which is cool.
He folds up. Remember, he would fold up the suit. Do you remember the jacket?
Oh yeah. I mean, he had the cool colors, right?
Yeah. So far, your version of it sucks.
The version is work,
right? Yeah.
A lot of work. That's true. It's not glamorous, but you're satisfied. Or at least you're stopping that from going to somebody else that's gonna maybe hurt their life. That part there. So you see a lot of that. Miami, it's just a ton of that. They'll put it in the stems of flowers. I mean, talk about the detail of work, right? They'll hollow them out and fill them all up. That's impossible. I mean, it's really hard unless we had intelligence or a great dog to really hit that, because the x-rays are hard to reach. So they would do crazy ways you could imagine to smuggle stuff in. They would hollow out tiles, for roofing, and put 1 kilo in each one.
I wrote a story about a guy. That's what they did. They had the concrete pallets and concrete tiles that they were sold them in and came in with pallets.
Yes, that's a level of corruption, because that's not really going to where it's supposed to go. That's going to get ripped off, and it's going to other places. So that's how corrupt it was in the 80s and 90s and beyond. And things have changed now, and I'll talk a little bit about that. What happens? The collapse. Escobar was killed. The collapse of the Medellin Cali cartels. And then the Mexican cartels stepping up and working with the FARC, which has now changed. Even they changed now. And now they have a different name. And they're working with them. They're bringing the coke to them, and Mexico takes care of all distribution. They handle from there on. They take it all. They don't have to worry about that. You just make it, we take care of it. We go into Colombia. So the Mexicans pretty much are running Colombia and Central America. They're not just in Mexico. They're all over the region. And then, of course, on top of that, you have the collapse with the communism and socialism that's taken over the region, which really paralyzes the whole country. That's why we really have to keep an eye on what's going on in there. So I made a lot of contacts, and I said, you know what, this is cool. I don't mind doing this kind of work, but I wouldn't mind, since I dealt with a lot of agents, investigators, to take it to a next level, which is what you do as an agent. I mean, I'm not stuck to the airport now. As an agent, I get to go all over the country, all over the world, right? Make my cases about their probable cause and stuff like that. So I network a lot with FBI, ATF, DEA, and customs. It makes sense since I was already with customs, I would just go over as an agent, right? Since I work a lot with these guys, but they didn't want to give up a lot of their inspectors because they know it's hard to fill those positions. So they didn't want to hire. So I had to go with other agencies and put in for them because it's not fair to me. I wanted to be an agent. I wanted to be an investigator. I wanted to do other things. So eventually ATF was the fastest one that picked me up. Within that time, within Department of Treasury, I get picked up with them. And then a year later, at 2000, I get picked up as an ATF agent and we're in Tampa, Florida.
Nice. So I for clarity purposes, so here's what, because just this is what I understand. So, and I only understand this because I've written several stories. I wrote a story called American Narco. And so so you're saying like, right, as a custom agent, like you find the drugs and you're like, okay, then you're notifying somebody else and then they're trying to either follow that drug shipment and bust the guys. Is that it? Because let me give you an example. I had the story I wrote, they had shipped in marijuana in these tiles and they allowed the shipment, like they delivered the shipment, and these guys loaded it into their warehouse, sat it there for like a week. And there was a tracking device inside the thing. And so they start unpacking the whole thing. And suddenly there's this black box with a little light on it and these wires. And they're like, oh shit, they throw it, they run, but of course by that point they're pulling up and the
gig is up.
Yeah. They bust them like 2 days later, they come and raid their house or something, their houses and stuff. But so at this point with customs, you're just saying, hey, here's what we found. And they're doing the rest of that. You wanted to actually be the guy to go
the next level.
Yeah. Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I just clarifying what the next level is.
Yeah, because they're customs inspectors, right? That's the term. I think it's changed now, but the term used to be customs inspectors, but you had arrest authority and you did everything else. And then there's the agents, the criminal investigators that go and you give them, hey, I just had this huge seizure right now with this fish, right? 850 pounds. All right. We can sometimes set up surveillance within the airport, right? Close to the airport, the warehouse. But if it's going, let's say, to New York City, right? Well, they're taking it from there.
Yeah.
We're not going to New York City. I got to stay and do my job and do the next shift and get some more dope that's coming in because you know what? It doesn't stop. They knew if they factor those losses in because that's part of doing business.
Right.
With the Colombian cartels. They just keep on bringing it in. Okay, hey, they got this one. Guess what? We just got another 4,000 in. And that doesn't, it's good. So I wish I picked up with ATF because sometimes you don't know, right? You take a chance. Sometimes they may say the Southwest border. Sometimes you might have to go to New York City or a big city where it's really expensive. I got fortunate enough. I stayed in Florida. I went to school, like I said, St. Louis University, up just north of Tampa in where you are, Pasco County. And I started working from there. And I was fortunate the group I started, a lot of guys worked undercover because you can't just go into undercover work cold like that, right? If you do that, you're going to get hurt.
Right.
I mean, you can watch all the Miami Vice you want and watch all the TV shows and Donnie Brasco. And that was also very popular back in the 90s. Remember Donnie Brasco with Al Pacino and Johnny Depp? Yeah. You watch all that stuff, but it's one thing on television, right? Like you said, and one thing, the real world. And the real world is you got to know how this can be. Like I said, I grew up in Catholic schools, right? And now I have to learn this world. I learned a little bit for the drug world, which is fascinating. But now I got to work face-to-face undercover where I pretend to be like these guys and how to fool some of these guys who are hardened professional criminals. That's all they do and make them think I'm one of them because I'm nothing like it.
I was going to say, which is you like you said, you watch it on TV and people think, oh, I could do that. No, you can't. They spot you in a second. I used to joke around, with the guys in prison. Like, we'd just be walking and they'd see me and they say, hey, Cox, what's up? And I go, I can't call it. And they just stop. They just start laughing. They go, stop. I go, what are you talking? I did that. I did that good. They go, no, it's even worse when you do it. They're like, you're not even close. You can't even come close to pulling out. And you can't. You just can't fake that. Yeah. It's hard. It's you really have to become an actor to be able to fake.
That's true.
Be able to fake that. You have to be good at it. It takes time.
It takes time. You got to practice it. And it takes years. So I had good mentors, right? I watch a lot and you develop your own technique, right? You watch these guys. I spoke Spanish, so that's an advantage. I make sure my English was broken. I didn't sound like that. I just came back Cuba 10 años, right?
Right.
So you have to come up and let my hair really long. I think I sent you some pictures. I don't know if you saw them yet.
I haven't seen them yet.
Yeah, see them?
I'll check them out.
All right. I sent you some pictures. My hair was long. I had a big beard. I didn't want to get all of the tats. Some guys have, because when I got out of it, I knew I'll be done with it.
Right.
I want to go back to who I was. Because I don't want to be like, oh, great, I got this now. People say, what the heck's wrong with this? So that was never me. I never really cared for it. That wasn't my thing. So I wanted to fake enough. The beard's okay. The hair was long enough. You do the accents. You get to know the culture, get to know these guys. It was easier to deal with people. If they were non-Spanish speakers, you tell your story, who you're working with. You say, hey, these families are looking, the cartels are looking for guns, right? Because they are. And my job here is to be ATF, is to buy a lot of guns. And these guys, I don't want to fill any paperwork, right? Because I don't want to show up in no shop and put my information in there, right? So these guys will sell me guns off the street, untraceables. And you pay a premium for that because that's what you want. And a lot of these guys have horrific criminal histories. So I deal a lot with repeat violent offenders. I dealt a lot with gang members, armed drug traffickers, international firearms traffickers, domestic firearms traffickers. I dealt with armed home invaders, cases for murder for hires. So that was ATF's niche. What does ATF do? Alcohol, tobacco, firearms. Well, it's a small A for alcohol, a small T for tobacco, a huge F, and an immediate E for explosives. So we do a lot of gun cases. Needless to say, a lot of guns. And that's what ATF is. And so I found that fascinating. And I knew something about guns, but man, I became an expert on pretty much the Gun Control Act, NFA, National Firearms Act, and all the different weapons from machine guns, silencers, pipe bombs. You know, ATF sometimes call it with all the training. ATF stands for all the fun because we would do a lot of shooting. I mean, I trained in handguns from pistols to revolvers, my M4, which is a short barrel rifle, right? I had shotguns, something short barrel shotguns also we were shooting. So we trained a lot of different weapons. And then we also were familiarized in case we come across different machine guns, we know what we're doing, right? Got to make sure and check all that stuff out. So that's what we did, ATF. And it's something that's early enough, you have to cut your teeth. You know, one of the guys I worked with, he was Puerto Rican, and he was involved back in the 80s in a shootout where he had a SIG 9mm. The bad guy had a SIG 9mm. He fired the round, and his round went into his gun and plugged the barrel. So he's like this, and the round goes like this. It's like 1 in a million. Damn, and Hialeah back in the 80s. So it can get ugly and wild. So we had a good time. We had some good stories, and I learned a lot from him, and him being Puerto Rican, and I saw how he tackled things and all that. So I developed my own style. We worked a lot together, and then I grew up, and then you know what also helps? Having good informants. You have a good informant, which I developed a lot of these guys. They can pretty much, you walk on water. It's like gold. You say, hey, he vouches for you. There's no more questions. Let's do business. Hey, he said, you're the guy. Okay, man, this is what you want. No questions asked. And boom, 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 boom. And this is what these guys do. But if you have a bad informant who's playing both sides, it'll destroy your investigation. Yeah, you have to have them accountable. So you really, and that's why I like to, once I had the introduction, I cut them out.
Yeah.
Done. And I want to deal with the drama with an informant. They can ruin your case. I put too much hard work because ATF is a very smaller outfit than the FBI or DEA, right? We have less than 3,000 agents, I think 2,800, right? FBI has 4 times that, enormous size. So we just can't delegate, hey, I need you to do surveillance. I need you to do undercover. I'm the case. I had to do everything. I'm the undercover. I'm the case agent, right? I deal with property. I deal with my own intelligence workup. I wear all the different hats because you have to, because we're a smaller outfit. If you want to do the bigger cases. Now, if you want small, you don't do that.
Right. I was going to say the informant thing, I'm researching a story right now, and it's like, it's funny, you know, you do all the incident reports. You read through the incident reports, and the first thing they do, like literally, obviously this guy got busted. You know, he got busted. He got busted for, I think it was for a gun actually. Mm-hmm. And then he goes and he makes they have him make a couple of meth buys, you know, and he's just wired. They're just control buys. Then they have him eventually introduce, you know, his boss, right, which is the undercover. Then the undercover goes with him on a couple of buys.
Sure.
Then just the undercover buys, and then they cut the informant out. And and to me, like, having been in prison, I realized that the problem is, like, if you can't let him keep buying. You can't let the informant keep buying, because first of all, he's unreliable. He's got a record. And then what happens if he gets busted for something else? You can't put him on the stand like, oh, since then you've been busted for this and this, like, and he has a huge incentive to lie, and the agent doesn't. So, you want to put somebody on the stand, you want it to be the agent.
That's right. A clean jacket.
He introduced me. Here's what I did. I bought a kilo over the course of the next month.
Yeah.
Or 2 months.
That's the best way to do it. You have to, because, and unfortunately some of these guys have drug addictions, right?
Yeah.
They keep on doing stuff. They get messed up, and they're not right when they're high, right? And they do stupid things. So those are the factors you got to get into. That's why I was fortunate. Some people don't want to do undercover work. Not for everybody. I liked it. I really decided I kind of like playing the role. And I dealt with all kinds of people. I just told you about the variety, but also the variety of people from different Hispanic groups, different blacks, different other European groups, right? Just a variety of people. And because it worked and what I was doing, it makes sense. It's based on what's really going on. The cartels have people. They need guns, right? And by the way, not only buying the guns, but I also like selling some drugs on the side. What else do you have for personal or for other use? So I buy dope and guns. Sometimes you come across some other stuff. Hey, I have also some body armor. Looking for the body. Yeah, I'll take some ballistic armor. It's amazing what people start telling you and what they do and what else it leads to. Hey, I'm also doing this too. Hey, this guy is also into explosives or into this. Oh, hey, this guy's selling a lot of cigarettes without tax stamps. We do those cases too, a lot less. But yeah, we do all that stuff. So it really opens up, and people talk and they feel confident with you. You get a lot of information. And I had everything. Like I said, for trial purposes, I want to make it like a movie, right? I want the jury to feel comfortable. First of all, I had to make the prosecutor feel comfortable. And once he feels comfortable, then the jury.
Do you hear that?
Yes.
Can you hold on a second?
Sure.
Sorry.
No worries.
It's just I don't even know what that is, but here's the funny thing about it. Since I'm speaking with you, is my wife's ex-boyfriend was arrested for he had a dispute with a guy over I'm pretty sure, I think it was drugs or something, and he made a bomb.
Oh no.
And left it for the guy. It didn't go off.
Oh my gosh, that's crazy.
But he ended up going to jail for it, and like he's on like the no-fly list. And so every time I get a package and I walk out, my first thought when I see the package is,
yeah, I would too.
Please let this guy, please let this really be from Amazon. And I keep, it's so funny.
Oh my gosh.
Sometimes I get deliveries. It's like it's just there. And I don't unwrap it. My girlfriend comes in. I'm like, you're unlocking it. You're opening that.
It's not uncomfortable. A lot of people get into making these pipe bombs, right? And they tighten them up in there, but it's also very dangerous. If you don't know how you do it right, they can let the flip too early and explode, so they have damage. It's very volatile.
I actually had a friend that was making a pipe bomb when he was like 15, 16 years old, and it exploded, blew his hands off. The shrapnel, like he bled out within a minute.
Oh no!
But he died, and just a kid, just being stupid. Thought it was cool. Had made a couple small ones, and just playing. Never once thinking to himself like, "Hey, this could be it.
This could be it."
You understand what you're playing with, right? Like this isn't a joke.
No, it isn't like playing with like firecrackers and stuff like that. It's even you might lose your finger or something. You're not careful with it. But a pipe bomb, that's no joke. And then these guys get really nasty with it. Some of them put like shrapnel inside to really do some serious damage. So, yeah, so that's the kind of case I wanted to do. I wanted to make sure for the jury and for the prosecutor that we had good video, right? I wanted to make sure it is clear. It's like watching a movie. I wanted the jury to see, okay, this is the evidence. Watch the movie. And that's a big difference you see between the federal side and state and local, right? Especially with the local sometimes. It gets a little bit different. Federal, we have a little more time to take our time with the case, make it the strongest case we can and get as many people as possible. That's why we have a little more time, and it's different. That's why I like the federal system. We have a chance to really make the cases bigger and stronger, and we have good prosecutors. A lot of them are career prosecutors, and they really know how to make good cases. So that's what I did. I wanted to make sure, undercover wise, I had. And sometimes with informants, there's always issues with the equipment. Sometimes they could be messed up and everything else. So they're not professionals, right? They didn't go to school for this. They don't understand case law. They don't understand entrapment, right? You want to make sure people understand, this is what they do. This is what they're involved in. You don't want to bring someone who's not involved in this kind of work. They're actively doing this. They're predisposed. This is what they do. And,
Right.
and they have the history of doing this, right? So these are all the factors you got to come. As a professional, you bring that to the table. And informants are, I hate to say it, necessary evil, right? Because they are the eyes and ears in the street. Because I can't live in the street, right? The reality is I pretend to.
Right.
And then I go back to the office. I got to do a lot of paperwork. I got to go to the prosecutor. I got to deal with evidence. I got to talk and give a briefing. So it's a whole different world, and you just show up. But the good thing about them, even though it would cut them out, remember their eyes and ears. They can still tell you, hey, I heard so-and-so had some doubts about you.
Mm-hmm.
I need to tighten this up a little bit. When you come back with me and let's have another conversation with them, make sure you vouch for me and make sure, hey, this is the guy, man. There's nothing to worry about. So those are the things. You keep them a distance, but you still have to make sure that they're listening to what's going on, because that's important. Because the last thing you want to do is get caught off guard. And I was fortunate enough. I mean, there's always some hairy, close moments, right? But you got to have. And I'll give you an example. And I put it in my book, ATF Undercover, which I talk about. And this happens. And I did a lot of work in Pasco County, and I had an undercover apartment in Wesley Chapel. I did.
Where I live.
I know. I did. And I used to live there in West Chapel, and then moved down south when I first started working out there. A lot cheaper than Tampa in 2000. I know 54 is completely different than it was 20 some years ago.
Well, I live off 56. 54 turns into 56. So, but yeah, it's even further. Like it's a 15-minute drive to 75 from where I live. It's like living in the Truman Show, though. I mean, everything's brand new. Everything's underground. All the houses look similar. I mean, it's a great area. Like everybody, it's funny on my street. There's 2 sheriff's deputies. There's like an insurance salesman. There's a couple bankers. Like I'm the riffraff on the street. So,
You're not 56. You're not too far from Lando Lakes either, then.
No, very, very close.
Very close.
Yeah,
I got to know. Yeah, I got to know Pasco really well from making the cases. So I got to know Pasco. I don't know how much you know Pasco County, but I got to know all the way to Newport Richey, Port Richey, the Hudson area, even across to near Tarpon Springs, and going to Zephyr Hills. So this takes place. I'll tell you this story here. This happens in Zephyr Hills. Zephyr Hills, people who don't know, Zephyr Hills or Dade City. At the time I was working, I'll say it was back in 2000 to 2012. And this story takes place in 2009, 2010. So this is the Dade City Pasco I'm talking about. And the Mexicans were picking it up, right? They're moving a lot of meth. There's no more meth labs. There's still some, but now they're bringing a lot of the meth from Mexico. They're just piping it in. And that whole area became a big pipeline, which I was saying. I think a lot of still drugs and a lot of Mexicans still out there, which this is where everything's changed a lot. And this is a trailer. I meet with this guy. He's a career criminal, drug trafficker, right? Had an informant, make an introduction. First time me and him are sitting in the car together. I meet him out 301, and we're going to drive to these trailers, shady trailers, predominantly Hispanic, right? And he's talking to me. He's telling me his history. He said, man, yeah, I'll get you these guns and all that, but I used to move a lot of coke, a lot of product. I was moving 2 or 3 easy kilos a week. I was like, okay. So I said, you tell me. I mean, he just got out. He wants to get back into the game. This is what he does. I said, okay. So he took me there. He's a non-Spanish speaker. And he takes me to the trailers, and he said, hey, this is my guy here. He has the guns. Some guys give a heads up, a little nervous about this. They say sometimes guys who buy guns a lot are feds. I said, no, man, I'm no fed. Of course, you got to deny that. You're not going to.
You got me.
You got me there. It's over. Let me take you back home. No, that's going to happen. So you deny that. And he goes in there. And I talked to his guy who's there, he's Hispanic, bald head, right? And we're talking a little bit in Spanish. He's testing me out, which is fine. And he goes in a trailer. So him and I are sitting outside in my truck, and I see more people. We get out of the car, and he's on one side, I'm on the other side, and I can see there are a lot more people going to the other side of the trailer. Right? A lot more people going inside. He can't see that. I can see that. Right? So I can see that. So you're going to have instincts to say, listen, I just met you guys. The deal we're supposed to be doing is for an AK-47 with 75-round drum, 2 Glock pistols, almost an ounce of meth for a little over $3,000, right? And I don't feel comfortable. He goes, hey, listen, the stuff's inside, but these guys don't want to bring it out. So I drove out here. Normally what you do is you wrap it up, you bring in the car real quick, and we're done. I get the hell out of here, right? And he said, but he wants to come in. You go inside. I was like, and I know there's more people coming in. And he doesn't know that I know that already. So I'm just like, no, dude, I don't want to meet anybody. I said, no, it's fine. I said, no. And I said, okay, what do you give me the money? And I'll get it for you. I said, no, I'm not doing it. I think what's going to happen is you're going to walk away with $3,000, and I'm going to have a bigger headache to deal with to chase you and everybody else who just stole my money, that was going to be a rip. So I said, I'll give you 5 minutes. I'm going to sit in the car. Either you bring it or I'm out of here. Because and that's the beauty of being the case agent and the undercover, is that I don't feel the pressure. Let's say I was just the undercover and I'm working for somebody else, working their case, right? Sometimes you feel the pressure, you want to make it happen. For me, I'm both. And if it happens, great. If not, I got a lot of work. I got other people I'm dealing with. I got you today. I got someone else tomorrow, right? So I don't ever felt that kind of pressure. I had to make it happen because I want to go home at the end. That's the most important thing. No deals there. 5 minutes later, a Honda Odyssey pulls up. Guy pops up with an AK-47, 75-round drum. So him and I talk. He sells me the gun. I take a look at it. I gave him the money for that, and then he has a backpack. Another friend had brought him, and he sells me the Glocks with the crystal meth. And I said, hey, dude, next time, just keep it between us, and I don't want to deal with this circus next time. And he understood. Right. And he understood that.
So what?
I think it was testing me.
Right. So why would you go? Why if the AK wasn't in there, they showed up later. Like, why am I going in the trailer? Like, why? What do you think they were trying to get you in the trailer for?
I think they want to rip me off.
Oh, okay.
I think they
wasn't money. So okay.
Yeah. I think they want to rip me off. That's what I think. They want to take my $3,000, $3,400, and hit me. He said, "Hey man, this could be easy hit right here, and we don't have to sell anything, because you don't know. Some of these these are gang members, by the way. These aren't average. So these are shitty trailer in Zephyr Hills. There's a lot of gangs in that area. I want you to understand, a lot of Hispanic gangs, a lot of gang members, selling a lot of meth, a lot of heroin, armed to the teeth.
I don't think of Zephyr Hills and
that's what I think of.
Like that at all. I mean, it's very rural. Like you know what I'm saying. It seems like it's
read my book and I'll give example after example of that area. Go in there and stuff like that. It is hot. And that's when I was there. I think it's gotten worse, what I've seen, because the cartels have just gotten stronger. When I was there, they were coming up. El Chapo was good. Sinaloa is strong. But now you have the rise of CJNG, with Jalisco New Generation Cartel. Yeah. Major rival for Sinaloa, right? El Mencho, he's now the big player. Cervantes, right? And they're going to war. And all these guys, El Chapo, El Mencho, give your audience a little background. All these guys came out of absolute poverty. I mean, they were selling avocados and oranges in the street, and now have risen to be big drug lords where their assets are over $50 billion. That's according to the Mexican government and the U.S. government. So you tell me they're not making drug lords in Mexico when these guys, and most of these guys are illiterate. They dropped out of school when they're in the 4th or 5th grade, right? But what are they good at? They're good at killing.
Yeah.
And they're not afraid to kill.
Yeah, they're brutal.
They're brutal.
Brutal. Is it El Mayo, which was Chapo's, basically started the Sinaloa, right? With and then El Chapo kind of came in right after. But I was gonna say El Mayo, like I heard that he still drives like an old. He's worth billions and billions or whatever, and he still drives an old pickup truck.
That's smart.
Around town, like he's not, he lives in a different places, and same thing with El Chapo. He's really good at surviving. He was up until the United States got him, but he was really good at surviving, through brutality and just forethinking, like always have an escape route, always be thinking, Don't all keep staying in the same place. Change locations, you know?
That's what El Chapo was nicknamed also El Rápido, the quick one. He was the master of the tunnels, right? And remember that great tunnel he had the second time he was captured underneath that
prison?
Unbelievable.
Now, you know what's funny about that? I had read that like the area that was where the prison is, it was actually the new generation that was in charge of digging, even though they're rivals, of digging the tunnel.
Yeah, but at that time, I think at that time they were still 2015. Yeah, they began to go a little bit sideways. Not as bad as now, but it would get a lot worse. But what a corruption! That's one of the things I talk about. Is that we don't have a equal partner in the war on drugs. The corruption in Mexico is so unbelievable, and that's the reason I bring that up, because during the trial for El Chapo in New York, it was brought. These are government witnesses testified that El Chapo offered. This is before Lopez Obrador, the president before that, with Peña Nieta. He offered him of a bribe. Nieta wanted, allegedly, according to court documents, he wanted a $250 million payout. So we want to look for El Chapo. They said, "You don't worry about it. You can be a fugitive for another 15 years, right?" He said, "No, I'll pay you $100 million." And allegedly, witnesses said, testified, he took it. He took it. So if the top of the Mexican government is on the take, then we have no chance. And this is what the battles we're fighting. You know, you see case after case after general, attorney general. I mean, just keep on getting arrested for being involved in money laundering and involved in all this stuff here. And this guy El Mencho out of CJNG, he was former law enforcement. He was out of Jalisco, right? He was involved. So a lot of these guys know the game. They know it. And he's the same way we just talked about at Mayo when I was reading Guadalajara, because now it's the battle for Guadalajara, which is where a lot of stuff is going on. But he looks like he's won because they were trying to do a split. You know how everything is. Everybody wants to be king, right?
Yeah.
One day you're the king, they want to take you out, right? El Mencho had guys he brought in that was former Millennium Cartel guys that split, right? And they want to take over. And this guy's name is escapes me right now. But if you look at the videos, he has him tortured, right? Wrapped up, kill him, and then left at a park bench. This is what happens when people betray El Mencho, right? And stuff like that. So right now, it seems like he still has the lockdown in Guadalajara, which is very important for him. And he's the same guy that you're talking about, Amayo. He likes to live modestly. Not like Escobar, right? That lived in that big palace, right? Everybody knew where he lived and where he was at, but he bribed everybody. These guys have to low key. El Chapo's bounty was $5 million, right? At his peak when he escaped the second time. After Sean Penn and Kate Del Castillo interviewed him. And if you haven't seen that interview and video, man, you guys need to check that out. Rolling Stone magazine.
That's
unbelievable. Great. Unbelievable stuff. I can't believe Sean Penn did that, because you don't know how
listen, they don't care. El Chapo didn't even know who he was. Really? Like, he's probably thinking, well, my celebrity will probably help me a little bit or keep me safe a little bit. No, it won't. He didn't even know who you are.
No, I would not have done that. That could have gotten really ugly. And they almost caught him after the interview because they were tracking the Mexican actress Castillo's phone. U.S. authorities were tracking and just missed him barely, just barely. It will take a few more years to finally catch him again, and they will not escape the third time. Not escape a third time.
They obviously realized, like, look, we're just not going to be able to keep this guy here. We have to send him to the United States.
And that's so sad, because you know what? Now we have the costs, right? Now the U.S. tax dollar has to pay for keeping this guy for life, feeding him, the expenses, legal, everything we pay, because the Mexican government is so corrupt, they couldn't do it themselves. And it's case after case like this. Very sad. Very sad situation.
You know, it's funny. Like I first of all, people are always, the U.S. government's corrupt. Look, there's some corruption here and there, but you have no idea what it's like in other countries.
That's true.
In other countries, and not just that, it's like, look, you're a police officer in Mexico making $600 or $700 a month.
Nothing.
That's nothing. Like I get it. You shouldn't. You shouldn't be involved in corruption. You should be, but it's hard not to be. Not only for the money, but it's dangerous. Like if you end up being a cop, like it's kind of like the what was it? Shoot, I was going to say what there was a movie about it.
El Cholo was his name. El Cholo was a guy who his rival. They got wrapped up and executed. Look up his name, El Cholo.
Oh,
Look at the video. He's getting. You see the guy from CJ&G behind him in masks, and next thing you know, he ends up in a park bench. See the pictures, wrapped up. He was tortured, and said, "This is what happened to El Cholo, the traitor." You don't play. You don't play.
it's just it's a horrible situation in general.
Yeah.
So, when you were talking about like the higher up, upper echelon of the government, I have a buddy named Juan Sanchez who was in Venezuela, right? He was a Venezuelan citizen, came to the United States, started doing real estate, doing very well. 2008 financial crisis hits. His subdivisions and the developments start going under. He needs money. So he goes to Venezuela and he starts pitching to Venezuelans like, hey, you should invest. And so people in the government invest. Basically, the equivalent of the U.S. Or the head, like the U.S. attorney here, right? The U.S. Attorney General in Venezuela ends up investing with him. Multiple people in the government investing, but they're in he finds out later when Juan gets caught, the money they're investing is money they're laundering for Mexico.
For the cartels.
For the cartels through Venezuela. They give it to Juan. Juan loses the money.
Oh, no.
And now they're threatening to kill him. He actually goes back to Venezuela. They kidnap him for 4 or 5 days. He eventually escapes, gets on a plane, flies back to the United States. But when he gets caught, he eventually obviously cooperates. He cooperates, and the FBI comes in, and the CIA comes in. He said they never said CIA, but they never showed badges, anything. My lawyer told me I think they were CIA. They come in and they say, listen, we looked at your phone. We see phone numbers and names in here of people that we've had indicted from Venezuela that are in the government. And so they start asking him, you know this guy? You know this guy? He goes, yeah, I know that guy. And they said, we've had him indicted on a sealed indictment. We can't get him. But, so they asked him what happened. He tells them. And he says, do you want me to get him to come to the United States? And they go, yeah, but he would never do that. He's not that stupid. And they go, and Juan goes, no, he's that stupid. He goes, you don't get to become, you don't get that high in the government you don't get it through brains. You get it through brutality.
That's true.
So he contacts him because the guy had asked him to try and get him a travel permit in the United States so he could bring his family into the United States to visit Disney World.
Mm-hmm.
So he contacts him, sends him an email. No, that's not it. But his visa had been denied by the State Department. He said, all you have to do is have the U.S. Embassy write him a letter saying that it was a mistake and it's been approved and he can come. They wrote him a letter. He said, literally, we're talking about 3 days later, he's on a plane, flies into Miami, and they arrest him in the airport in Miami with his family thinking they're going to Disney World.
Disney World. No. And no, he's going to the slammer now.
You know what happened is he rolled over on a bunch of people. He ended up getting like 4 years or something and got back out.
Oh, did he?
Massive indictment.
These guys do. Like at that level, you got to cooperate. You got to flip. You got to turn. If one thing I've noticed, all these guys do, because if you don't, you get the hammer. You get slammed. You get the most time. So talking about Venezuela, man. Venezuela, with Nicolas Maduro now, it's a narco state. It has become he's not a communist anymore. And remember him, Hugo Chavez? This guy's no communist. This guy, it's all about making money, but the people suffer. He keeps them suffering. This guy's a dictator. He's a narco dictator. He's been indicted by our government, and to bring more. But you know what upsets me is a little politics here. But we'll talk a little bit of everything. My book's all about this. But Joe Biden threw him a lifeline. Administration to see if Chevron go back there and get oil pumped up because we don't want to deal with the Russians, right? We're tired of the Saudis, the stuff he's done, Mohammed bin Salman. So it's like we want to work with the Venezuelans, who's all the stuff this guy's done. He's done atrocities to his people. If you're not about him, you're done. And that's why Miami, has been transformed with the Venezuelans coming over. Like the Cubans did, from the 60s on, the Venezuelans have
Right.
brought a lot of money. Doral, I don't know if you're familiar with South Florida, has changed immensely with the Venezuelans. A lot of the money has come over, transformed it. So that's what you're seeing. And people say, well, man, America has, yeah, the United States has issues. I live in Virginia now, and I was fortunate enough to, I like to travel, like history. My background, I told you political science and history. I went to Mount Vernon, and I've gone to Monticello. Mount Vernon is Washington's home, and then
Yeah.
Monticello, Jefferson's home. And I visited there. And even it's true, 1797, Washington had just finished his second term, will not run for a third term, does not want to be seen like King George or a dictator. He says, even then applies today. We had issues, there's no perfect democracy. It's not a perfect system, but it's the best that's out there. And I think it applies today, the same thing. It's not perfect, people. We're not have a perfect system, but it's the best. It's the best that's out there. Trust me, I've seen, I studied politics internationally, the corruption. Yeah, we're going to have corrupt officials. We're going to have problems, but it's the best that's out there. So that's where we're at with the corruption in Mexico. But the Mexican government, it's probably worse. I think it's stronger than the Colombians were, because their reach is all over Central America. It's all over South America, and they have a lot of people in the United States, and they're reaching not just in customs officials, not just with politicians, but you see it deeper and deeper in our country because the money is so big and so out there, and the corruption is big. It's corrupt here, but they're corrupting here. So what are our solutions? We need to deal with the problem within. Treatment. We need people to get off it. We need people to work on their addictions, because it's just going to get worse. And they want to, like Maduro said, like I said, they're weaponizing cocaine to help destroy this country. They think it's going to fall like a rotten apple from within. People are going to fall and break, and that's what they're trying to do.
So, it's funny. So I wish, why can't I remember the name of this book? I used to know it too. And trust me, somebody in the comment section will tell me the name of the book. It was actually came out probably 10 years ago, maybe 15 years ago. And it's about, there's an evangelist, right? Like a preacher, super rich preacher. His son gets caught. He has a security detail, right? Like he's got several of these mega churches. He has a security detail, and one of the lead security agent or security person in charge of his security detail is a former DEA agent that had to retire because of brutality. Like he'd been caught multiple times, he'd been written up. He finally retires. Well, I'll call him the preacher. The preacher's son ends up getting caught smoking, doing drugs or something. One of his friend ODs on coke or something. I forget what it was. But he's upset, and he ends up venting to this former DEA agent. So his security, head of security. So his head of security, he's like, he says, how much money do I give, every month, every year? He's like, oh, like $1 million to these programs. And he goes, is it even helping? He's like, no, it's not going to, this is going to do nothing. And he says, well, what can end this? And he said, well, it's so out of control that the government they just can't. It's everything they can do to try and keep it stemmed. If you could get it pulled back a little bit, then they could probably get a better handle on it. And he said, there's an idea we used to kick around at the DEA. And he said, well, what was that? He said, if you poisoned the drug supply, then the hardcore, he said, the casual users aren't the problem. He said, the casual users would just stop. He said, but the drug addicts, he said, they would have to seek some kind of rehabs.
Any rehab, yeah.
Right. And so he ends up going to somewhere, and who knows where, Brazil, I forget where it was, but someplace. And he ends up finding this chemist, and he ends up getting these mushrooms that allows them to poison the drug supply, right? Like coke. And he of course, he gets a bunch of retired DEA agents, friends of his, to help him. There's a group of 6 of them. And he ends up poisoning a whole bunch of drugs. And what happens is the hardcore users, they inhale it, and then if they do enough of it, it ends up breaking down and shutting down their livers, and they die. So they end up doing this on a massive scale.
Oh my gosh.
And I listen, it was and of course, what happens is it works. But the problem is what he tells the preacher is like, there will be some people will get sick. There may be a few deaths, and he knows the reality is there's going to be thousands, and there ends up being tens of thousands of deaths because they do it on such a massive scale. And
But this is fiction. This is fiction.
it's fiction. Yeah, it's fiction, but it's a great book. I mean, keep in mind how much I read when I was locked up. It was just really well written, researched. How much was possible, I don't know, but it really, and the guy's got the statistics and the whole thing, and you really realize reading the book like what a massive issue it is.
Oh, it is. It is. And another way to attack it was when you're seeing here, you see in Virginia all over the country, and it started with marijuana. It's getting legalized all over the country, right?
Right.
Recreational use. You take because the Mexican cartels make a lot of money cultivating marijuana, so you
Right.
take that away from them. That's going to hurt their profits a lot too. So
Right.
I think marijuana, you're seeing it. I mean, I know Florida is just medical, but I know Virginia got it approved for recreational. So it is going all over in the Northeast, the Midwest, of course, the West Coast, up and down is approved for recreational. So that's where you're seeing it. It's going that way. I think marijuana, Thomas Jefferson even grew marijuana in Monticello, right? Founding fathers. I mean, marijuana's been around for hundreds of thousands of years. People have been smoking it, right?
Right.
It's not my thing. I don't like getting high. I don't like, smoking my lungs. But if some people, that's what they want, like cigarette smoking. I'd rather not be around it, right? I like to eat away from that. I don't like to be around any of that stuff here. But some people like it. I think the edibles now, are legal in every state. It gets you high. Those edibles.
Right.
Have you seen that? That's everywhere now.
Yeah. I mean, I think drugs were just never my thing. But but this is the thing. I definitely agree that, to me, look, if you took the money they spent on the prison population and you made going to rehabs affordable, and you did more education, and you legalize a lot of those substances, I think would alleviate the problem considerably. And it'd be detrimental to the cartels.
Absolutely. Because then you're taxing it here. We're making the money, right? The states and the federal system. So you have to eliminate marijuana from being a Schedule I banned substance, right? That's the first thing, because you can do all the things at the state level, but if you're still you use marijuana, you want to buy a firearm, and an FFL, Federal Firearms Licensee, you're still prohibited. You can't do that because you're still a drug user, right? So if you're a drug user, you can't do that. Marijuana is still on the list there. So a lot of things, I know that's passed in the House of Representatives, that needs to be approved in the Senate to start making this nationwide, because I've seen it firsthand. I think we're wasting time in the judicial system, clogging the judicial system, when you have these petty cases. ATF went after the worst of the worst, right? The most violent. That's what you have to focus on. The most violent repeat offenders, armed traffickers, armed home invaders, guys who want to commit murder for hire, international traffickers. That's gun traffickers. That's what we have to focus on, not guys who have some weed they want to smoke and they're doing this on the side. I mean, all the places want to have a ZT policy, zero tolerance. That's a waste of time. That's you're clogging the system on these people should be treated for health issues, not criminal. You shouldn't criminalize these people, in my opinion. This is coming from a guy who's been 26 years in law enforcement, who have seen it, right? I just think it is a waste of our tax dollars. It's a waste of time. And we're building more prisons. We need to focus on, and the court system gets overwhelmed with it also. And you don't want any of that. So we have to be smarter. It's marijuana. Yes. Hey, we learn the lesson from Prohibition. I wrote a book about it, right? The rise of the outfit here, the Chicago crime bosses. And that's what made Al Capone. That's what made these guys a violence, because it was illegal, right? And then once we legalize it, well, there goes that. And all of a sudden, the governments are making the money, right? They're getting taxed. And everybody can enjoy themselves. You're not being criminalized for having a beer or drinking whiskey, which was ridiculous, right? The same thing, in my opinion, should apply to marijuana. The other drugs, a little bit tougher to deal with, but we have to come up with solutions. But marijuana is a first gateway, I think, with that. Because, I mean, everybody in college, you see how many people in college have to go sometimes to really bad areas to get some weed, right?
Right. End up getting hurt, robbed.
You just go to the store, right? It's illegal. We have to be smart about it. Obviously, I don't want to be around it, and I don't want to smell it, because I went to Kingston to do some work for training, and everywhere in Kingston you could smell it, the ganja, as they say. Ganja man, right? It's everywhere. And I really don't. I didn't care for that smell.
Okay.
Strong.
Kingston in
Jamaica.
Jamaica, right?
Right, Kingston, Jamaica. They
Okay.
have a lot. They grow a lot of weed. They call it ganja over there. A
Oh, listen,
lot.
and there's places in Jamaica you can't even go.
Oh, that's true.
Like, I mean, the government doesn't go.
Yeah.
Like when I went to Jamaica, it's funny, I was on the run and I went to
Really?
Jamaica
Yeah.
and we were have the taxi driver, he's like driving us around and we were like, hey, let's go here. Let's go here. And he was like, yeah, you can't go there. And he was like, listen, he's like, the police don't go there. Like, you definitely aren't going there. He was like, we're not going there in my cab.
Yeah.
And it was like, wow, it was like, it's that bad? Like, what do you mean the police don't go? He's like, no, it's that section, that area is completely owned and operated by this one gang.
Jamaican
And
posse, whoever. Yeah.
Try.
Yeah. Yeah. They just had a huge arrest. I think about 5-7 years ago. Guy's name was Coke, like from cocaine.
Right.
Yeah. And the people in Kingston were rioting because he obviously, they provide a lot of work, and it's like an Escobar type, right? They also give a lot to the community, just like Chapo did, Guzman. They give a lot, they help a lot. They know that the little people, they want to take care of little people, so they kind of help the little people a lot, but because they work for their organization and do stuff like that. That's the same mentality you saw out there in Kingston. Yeah, a lot of people just want to go. If I tell them to go to Jamaica, I was gonna maybe work there as an attaché, but once I saw first after 2 weeks there how the conditions were, no way. I wouldn't bring my family, that's for sure. And I definitely wouldn't go with my family in Mexico, because also because at the end of my career, I promoted and I went to ATF headquarters, and I worked there 2 years, and I was helping briefing the director case with one in command for the central region, who now is number 2 command for ATF right now. So that's a good contact that I have, and working and talking and briefing some of the most sensitive cases that ATF was working. And then I was going to maybe transfer to Mexico, but then with the issue with Lopez Obrador was going on, who's the president of Mexico, they renounced our diplomatic immunity status as agents. So you think I'm going to go to Mexico and they don't want to carry firearms? So they don't want you armed. They don't want you to have diplomatic immunity. And I'm going to be kidnapped with my family? I said, no way. I said, I'm eligible to retire. I did my time up here. I enjoyed my career. Thank you so much. And then I got into writing.
Right.
I did a nice trip
in writing.
Well, I've been, writing like this by a year and a half now since I've been retired. But I used to write a lot of reports, right? You get good and really detailed in writing a lot. So I said, and I always had a thing for it. I like reading. I'm always fascinated with, history and political science and current events. I'm always reading information. So that's what a lot of my books are. I got fiction, nonfiction, but I do a lot of politics. I do about organized crime. And I realized, when I started writing, and I'm not here to promote anybody, but, I had a family member. She was in the publishing industry for over 20 years, right? She got laid off, and I was talking to her, and she said, it's hard at the time, COVID was still around, right? And it was such a huge backlog. And I said, you might want to look at Kindle and with Amazon, because you can self-publish.
Yeah.
And you don't have to wait for anybody, right? And you get like 80-20, especially digital books, like 75-25, right? So, screen on both ends. It's screen for my pocketbook and a screen for the environment when you do the digital books, right? And then I'm now doing audio too. And shout out to Sean Milo for that. We both know him. He's a great guy. And that should be coming out, my book. If you're not everybody's a big reader, and I've been told a lot of people would rather listen to it.
Yeah.
And it's a great story. I encourage people to listen to these books and go Audible. It should be out hopefully in about a month or less. It'll be out there. So I looked into it, and it worked for me because I go at my pace. I do whatever subject matter, because you know how it is. A publisher, you get rid of the middleman who only cares about making money. It's not about always making money. It's about putting something out there which I want to talk about, read about.
Right. I was gonna say also, as a writer, you'll make $6, $6.50, $7 on a book that you sell on Amazon. And if the publisher sells it, you're making $1.15, $1.35. Like, and look, when I was locked up, I got a book deal. They were in Barnes and Nobles. That's great. Like, how exciting is that? That's super cool. But in the end, like 6 months ago, this is 5 years later. 6 months ago is the first time I actually got a small check from them because it took that long to pay back the advance they gave me. They gave me like a $3,500 advance. And listen, in prison, $3,500 is a lot of money. But it just took that long to even pay it back.
That's ridiculous. Yeah, you would have made a lot more money with Kindle for sure.
Yeah.
And I like doing all. I mean, and I enjoy, just like I did my cases. I wore many hats. I apply that with my books. I do my own book covers. I do my own editing. I write the material. I choose what I'm going to write about. I just did a book that just came out. I think I forwarded to you on Facebook, a messenger on Jim Jones, right? In Jonestown, the massacre, because it's now 45 years, and I want to do a little bit deeper dive in that. And I found some pretty interesting things in there and mistakes that were made. And I thought things, and I also give my opinion, right, based on my expertise.
Right.
There's a worse U.S. cult mass murder in U.S. history. Almost 950 dead, right?
I was going to say almost 1,000 people. Or something like 150 kids or 200 kids or something. How many kids?
More than that. More than that. That's horrible. You could hear, if you haven't heard the Jim Jones tape, because he recorded the whole thing.
Yeah.
You should hear that.
Horrible.
My kids are crying and everything else. And the mother, his wife, Marcelina, I believe her name was, she's telling him, because these are his kids too, he's poisoning. He said, let the kids live. And he goes, just like this, he goes, mother, please. He's already crazy. Mother, please. Like, and very sarcastic and nasty. Like, says, children, hurry. Because he already killed the congressman, right? He had his goons go out and already kill the congressman, Leo Ryan, and his entourage, NBC and everybody else, the Washington Post. They gunned him down because they knew they had 20 defectors. He knew it was over. It was over in Guyana. And then he said, when they came back, said, hey, some escaped. He knew it was over. He knew they were going to come down, put him in jail, shut it all down. And he was so selfish. He'd rather everybody kill themselves to make that statement. He called it the suicidal revolution, which is insanity. All these people's lives that came in for a better life lost their lives. Drinking the Kool-Aid. That's what it's called.
Right.
Drinking the Kool-Aid.
It wasn't even Kool-Aid.
Flavor Aid. Yeah.
Flavor Aid. But poor Kool-Aid.
Yeah.
Poor Kool-Aid got hit with Kool-Aid, drinking the Kool-Aid this whole time. I'm drinking the Kool-Aid. Wasn't even Kool-Aid.
Flavor Aid.
But I was going to say, take the problem is everybody always focuses on the murder, right? The mass suicide. If you remove that though, his rise is amazing.
Oh my God.
His ability to manipulate is amazing. And the fact that he starts Jonestown and then the senator shows up and they realize what's happening. Congressman's going to go back to the United States. He's going to tell everybody. They're going to obviously send over the troops and grab these guys. I mean, it's coming down. But then he actually sends his guys to kill him.
That's unbelievable.
And they do, like, that story. That's the great thing. What I love about nonfiction. You couldn't come up with that.
No,
like that is so bizarre. It the term truth is stranger than fiction.
It's true. I agree.
If you told someone that and it hadn't happened, they'd be like, yeah, bro, that's just like it's too out there to believe.
Sure, I agree.
Nobody would like that's just too. But it happened. It's an amazing story.
He's another guy that grew up, and I didn't know his background until I researched. This is the reason why I do stuff like this. I love researching nonfiction. I love it. And I've done a lot of these. So if you like what we're talking about, check out the book, please. It's on Amazon. It just came out. But with him, he came out of absolute poverty.
Yeah.
Object poverty. I mean, out of Indiana, right? In Lynn, Indiana. His father was a World War I veteran who suffered serious chemical attacks. You know how the war was in the trenches, right?
Yeah.
He couldn't breathe. He couldn't work. Couldn't do anything. Guy was disabled pretty much. And the pension was horrible back then. And then they had the Great Depression. They lost their home. The government, the company, the mortgage company seized it. And the family had to buy him a shack. And they lived in a shack with no plumbing, and no electricity. An absolute horrible situation. So that's why I think he needs to find something. And I think that's what he found, religion and ministry, his goal, because he would obviously perverse it completely. And,
right.
and he would end up, the People's Temple ends up being a cult pretty much, because to join, you have to turn all your finances to, right? All your money goes to him. He'll take care of you. He'll find your housing. And he took advantage, and I hate to say it, it took advantage of a lot of minorities and a lot of disadvantaged people, right? And the politicians, because he came up with integration, right? He was one of the first guys integrating the churches with blacks and whites and everything else. Was unpopular in Indiana, right? He ended up going to San Francisco. Well, of course, very liberal out there.
Right.
Became very popular. He would help get votes for the mayor. In 76, Walter Mondale and Jimmy Carter was there, and he helped California go blue, right? So he can beat Ford. So that's why they were embarrassed, humiliated, right? Angry. They didn't want a full investigation on Jonestown. But this guy, Ryan, he was a Democrat, but he knew there was something wrong. But this is where I criticize him in the book a little bit. When you know this guy is so unstable, right? They had already information, affidavits of defectors, that they were already doing mock drills like this, drinking the Kool-Aid. They already trained them that if this happens, this is what we're going to do. They have people what they call white knight drills, where they have gunfire over their heads. So they would just stay down and they would drink the Kool-Aid. He had all this cyanide prepared for this. So you don't think...
But I mean, imagine how... Look, but I hear what you're saying, but if you were telling me that, I would be thinking...
That's crazy.
It's too crazy. Like, that's not going to happen. Like, that's never happened. Like I mean, in history, it's happened. But it's so unbelievable that an American citizen and that a group of American citizens would have done this, or that anybody would follow through. Like, okay, he's doing it. I get it. He's out there, but that's probably not. It's not going to happen. And who's going to kill a senator? That's not going to happen. With a senator or congressman?
Congressman. Yeah, not just a congressman, but the entourage that's with him.
The staff.
The staff. And there's one lady who was his staff member. She survived by playing dead for 24 hours on the strip there, and until the army came in to rescue her. She played dead. She had 5 bullet wounds inside her. She just wrote a book and a great interview. I haven't seen her talk about it. She gets very emotional. Now she took over his old position like 10 years ago. So now she's the congressperson from that district.
Okay.
Yeah. But,
wow.
Unbelievable story. But you know what? A lot of people didn't commit suicide. What the investigation shows, they wanted to leave. They were the guards. His what he called the red. He was a communist. Those who don't know, he is a hardcore, very much Marxist-Leninist communist. He hated this country because obviously the racial issues. He called it pretty much a racist, fascist nation, right? And he wanted to set up this Marxist utopia out there in Jonestown. He was big Fidel Castro. He was a big fan of the Soviet Union. He even had Soviet officials come in and say, this is the perfect Marxist utopia that I have set up here. And they congratulated him. They went out there and said, man, you've done here. But at the same time, these people were oppressed. He had him work 12-hour days. He fed him rice and beans while he ate like a king. And at the end, those who didn't want to commit suicide, the Goon Squad, what I call them, the Red Brigade, came out with injections and injected everybody in the shoulder with a cyanide. And you see that, and so a lot of people were murdered. And to me, when you're brainwashed like that, you're being murdered.
Because didn't some of the people even try and run off into the woods and stuff, and they were shooting at them? Or?
No, they didn't. You can't. No escape. You have to die. When he said it's time to die, it is time to die. There was no like, hey, this was a man. Now, these people were murdered. I mean, look, a lot of people say, especially children, and they have no say in it. They were forced to drink that. Small children, they were killed, and they were a lot. I think there were 200-something children that were murdered, and including his own children. And his own wife even protested and said, "This has to be a different way." And then it goes, mother, please. He goes like, he's already in that crazy psycho world. And he tells children, "We have to hurry, children. We have to hurry. We have to send a message to the world, the suicidal revolution." I mean, he was just off his... I mean, who in the right mind will see... Because he wanted to send a message. And then he didn't take the Kool-Aid himself. The cyanide. He shot himself in the head.
Did you... Well, I'm going to butcher this guy's name. The guy who wrote Fight Club, Chuck Paholnicek.
Yeah.
I know I butchered his name. Anyway, he wrote a book called Survivor, and it talks about a mass suicide, and he talks about several mass suicides in the book, but it's very much written in the same vein as Fight Club. He has that real choppy writing style, which is great because that book really moved along. He also talks about that's a great book with about multiple different types of suicide. Talks about Heaven's Gate.
Yep.
Yeah, that's mass suicide, but nothing like nothing compares to
It's nothing. We've never had it. It was the worst mass murder until 9/11, right? With Americans, right?
I see that.
So and with that, so going back to my point, I thought the congressman made a mistake. I know he had a history of being very proactive. He's a Democrat, and remember, this guy Jones helped the Democrats win the '76 election, the national election. He helped it win a lot because he was key getting the votes out with African Americans, because he had an integrated church. He was a socialist, remember, and there's a very socialist area. So the State Department did not give him a lot of information while I was reading. And according to the staff member who survived, what really was going on, because remember, they had people already saying about all these defectors saying, hey, dude, they're doing mock exercises. They're torturing people in there. If you stand up anything, they'll put you in this hot box. They'll put you underground. They put you in a well. They really torture people. You better get on the program. There's no escaping. There's no leaving. This is what they're doing to you. So I think it was a big mistake. Him knowing what's going on there, knowing these guys are armed. He knew they were armed. I personally, just being common sense, is I need the Guyana government to help me, give me security, protection. He went unarmed. He thinking that the media guys, oh, I have NBC with me, I have the Washington Post. He's not going to shoot us with the media here. Yeah, kill everybody.
This guy's not following the Geneva Convention. Like, I can't shoot reporters or medics.
Don't you know I'm a congressman?
Yeah.
I don't think he cares.
Yeah.
Sure, man. He care. So you can never underestimate your opponent. Never underestimate.
Yeah.
Be prepared. I think he would have, if he would have had the army, or at least some representatives, and they saw the evidence, I think they could have arrested him, taken him there, and he would have saved those lives. I think he was just approached the wrong way. And at the end, knowing that kind of person, how volatile he was, how could they not think that would not trigger that after he'd been practicing that, right? He pretty much said that's what he's going to do.
Arrogance.
So that's my criticism in the book. If you read it, I blame a lot of the Carter administration at the time for obviously he went out there as a congressman. He could do his own investigation, right? Different bodies of government. You have the executive and legislator, right. But they should have given him some support and protection, because he was set up to fail. He was set up to fail, and they failed badly. And look what we have, the consequences. So something you got to really think about this guy. And he really, there's a reason why he created Jonestown, because he was this close, again, picked up in the U.S. for obviously tax evasion. He really didn't have a church. He had all this protection as a church, but it was a cult, and he was stealing, and he was abusing.
Right.
He would rape the members. He would even rape males. So he was involved in a lot of bad things. So he knew his time was coming. That's why he set up Guyana. I think originally he wanted to go in Brazil, but it was easier for him because Guyana was a British colony, a former British colony, English speaking, and it just worked out easier for him to go to Guyana, which at the time had become a socialist nation, also very communist. So that's another issue they had to deal with. So interesting read. If you like what we talked about, I think you'll like the story of Jim Jones. If you don't know much about it, a lot of the younger generation, I've noticed, doesn't know anything what happened in Jonestown. So read about it. You'll be shocked. And his tape, the death tape, you got to listen to that. Of the brink of a madman with 1,000 people jumping off a cliff.
Well, shoot, I was going to say something too when you were talking. I was thinking, I know what it was. It was the, it kind of, one of the things you were talking about finances is it reminded me of David Koresh.
Oh, Waco. Yeah.
Yeah. He would have all the women and everybody go and get on food stamps and get on, like that. That's a big thing with the cults. One of the things they do is they immediately have everybody sign up for, they call it bleeding the beast. They call it like bleeding the beast, where you sign up for all the subsidies and all that, you get as much as you can. Of course, they all live there. And he, of course, he's got air conditioning. He's eating well. They're all
like a king. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's typical with this communist, socialist system. Look at Nicolas Maduro. You looked at Fidel Castro. You look at Xi Jinping in China. You looked at Kim Jong-un in North Korea. They abuse the people, the little people. They think this is better for them. No, this is the best system out here, folks. Don't get conned into that. This is the best system out there. Nothing is perfect, but it is the best system. At least, you know, you can work your way up. You want to get your education. You want to do things. You can make something in your life here. And it happens. One thing you can never take away from you, I tell people this all the time, is your education. They can never, no matter what happens, they can never take your education from you. They can't take your drive from you. They can't take your determination from you. That's built within you, no matter what government happens in here. So educate it and be free. And there's a lot of brainwashing. And be a person, ask questions, get different sources. Don't just accept one source. And unfortunately, these people did that, right? And you see the communists do that. And he was very good at propaganda and brainwashing, where you weren't allowed to get other information from other sources. It was his source of information, healthy diet every day. That way, that's what Castro did, the same thing. CCP does the same thing in China, and I've written about those books in China. They like their one-party system as our way or the highway. So end up one of three ways for you. Either death, imprisonment, or they're going to kick you out of the country. That's a reality. That's the reality we live in the 21st century.
All right. That's depressing. So, all right. So,
but true though, right?
You really brought the tenor of the show down.
No, but we're it though. We're the shining light here. So, hey, good thing is we're living the good country. Be happy you were born in communist China, or Venezuela, or North Korea. That is just. Have you ever seen the videos out there, man? That is depressing. See that. So those are the books. Also, all the kind of books I've written about. So I have such a huge just did 60th. Jim Jones is my 60th book. I just did my 60th book in a little over a year. So it's pretty cool. You can find it. Now I'm doing the Audible book should be coming out. That should be coming out within a month on ATF Undercover. And then I'm doing more with Sean. We're just doing the one on mass shootings. We just started that one. So some of the worst mass shootings in U.S. history. And based on my background, solutions to that. I mean, that could be a show within itself. What's going on in our country with mass shootings. That's depressing for me. And how we can stop them, and how what we can do. I don't know if you've seen the video or not, and I talked to a lot of people about this. I've done shows about this. Uvalde, Texas, what happened at Robb Elementary?
No, I haven't.
Yeah, you have to look at the video. 77 minutes while the shooter's in the classroom, killing the students and teachers, while the police is outside.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah. I've seen bits and pieces.
You gotta see the whole thing. It is really, all of it's out there now. And what's really upsetting, and you got to watch this, and the audience should look at this. One of the officers, female officers, you know, they forget they have the body cams on, right?
Right.
And another guy was recording her because everybody has it on. And I guess she had her off, but he had his on. And they're outside. They are already, finally, it was the feds. It was the Border Patrol. The TAC unit came in there, and it wasn't the locals. They were the ones who went in there. And I think they were like 15, 20 miles away. And they responded, and they're the ones that came in the classroom, and they're the ones that killed him, who killed the Ramos inside there. It wasn't the locals who stayed outside. He said, hey, wasn't your daughter in there? And one of the guys was saying, no, my daughter's a VPK, but if my daughter was in there, I would definitely have gone in.
Whoa.
Come on. My daughter was in there, but what, the other people's daughters children weren't good enough to go in there? I mean, that's what you serve and protect. This is what the call is about. When you got that kind of situation and kids are dying, that one of the girls are calling 911, saw her teacher get her head blown off, right? And the other students are dying, bleeding in there. It says, please come and help, using the teacher's phone, right, to call 911. You stay outside the classroom because, he's got a rifle. We have handguns. Well, they have nothing, right? Go in there. Get a shotgun. You got shotguns. You got everything else. Those are the kind of things I talk about where you need people who are teachers who are willing to protect. Teachers are willing to die for their students. Some of them were shielding their students at the end, taking the bullets for their kids. They want to fight. And those, just like after 9/11, when we had, after the pilots, right, taking over the airplanes, they had the option to be armed, right? We're to the point where we would probably have to do the same thing with administrators, teachers, the same thing, because some police officers, happened in Miami and Parkland, they stayed outside, right? And Nicholas Cruz ends up killing a lot of the students and teachers inside because he has a rifle, right? I understand it's not a fair fight. You have a handgun, he has better range, it's faster, and he's going through your body armor, but these kids have nothing, and the teachers have nothing. And staying outside, that's being a coward. After shoot training, so you got two people in, you do, and you address the guy. because that's what you're supposed to do. So I address a lot of that. Book's going to be coming on Audible soon. It's already on that. And I talk a lot of scenarios, what we've learned, what we haven't learned, and the problems we have. And we may have to become more like Israel to protect ourselves because the response time is too long. And if a lot of these places don't want you armed, well, then you have to do something about it, because this doesn't end. We just had another one in Michigan State, right? It just seems like every week there's a new active shooter. As we speak right now, Matt, there's somebody else who got triggered. It's going to do the same thing, because we have a mental health crisis in this country that's unimaginable. And on top of that, easy access to weapons. That's the problem. That's a depressing thing about 21st century America right now. And I put that in my book here. It's no solution, because the only other solution is a good guy with taking on bad guys with guns, right? Letting everybody be armed. And because in Indiana a few months ago, in a food court in a mall, a guy had armed himself in the bathroom. He started shooting, but somebody was armed, concealed weapons permit, and addressed him and killed him.
Yeah, you never see that. You never see that video though.
Hopefully
That's not
we'll
the
see
video they push.
No. We got to push other stuff. So those are things I want your audience to think about. Good conversations, serious topics we've taken on, but that's what I write about. Things are happening and solutions. My back, especially with ATF, my background with guns and stuff like this, it's really things that shouldn't be politicized by the right or the left. This is about us, right? Our family, because nobody wants their kids killed. Everybody wants to have their peace of mind. I have 2 daughters, safe at school. That's the worst case scenario. You get that call, school got shut down, a madman, it's in the loose there, and they do nothing. Pulse nightclub. I mean, it's just case after case. The police don't go in sometimes. Pulse nightclub, they spend like 12 hours. Well, he's there. Remember in the gay nightclub, the guy is shooting everybody in the gay nightclub. I mean, they wait for the SWAT team. Well, the people are in the bathroom and he's lining up in the stalls and shooting everybody. Why aren't they going in? So it is just one after another, and I pick apart each one. So it's an interesting read. What we have to learn and what we have to do, and it's about people being armed. These gun-free zones, Matt.
Yes,
the bad guys are going to victimize you, because they're
that doesn't change a fucking thing.
No, they're going to be armed. They know that's easy pickings, because I've done a lot of shows with guys, and just my own history, who have a history, and that's what they look for. They look for the bank that doesn't have the armed security guy, right? They look for the place in the mall which is nobody armed, no policing, or the theater. These are things we have to be prepared for.
If you outlaw guns, outlaws, look, let's face it, criminals are not going to abide by that.
No.
They're not going to abide by that rule. Oh, we're not allowed to have the gun. Oh, well, then I won't. What are you talking about? But if you're willing to commit a mass shooting, you're willing to break the law, the gun laws. And there's just too many guns. You'll never get rid of all the guns.
No, you can't get rid of guns. I mean, the United States is the biggest manufacturer of weapons in the world.
Yeah.
I mean, the Europeans have come here. I mean, you have Glock, used to be made in Austria, it's made in Georgia. Sig Sauer, which is made in Germany, it's made in the Northeast. H&K, also in Germany, they've come here because we're buying it all. America, I have my collection too, but you have to protect your family, because if you expect call 911 and the police will come save you from a home invader in your house, don't hold your breath.
Yeah, no.
You better get a concealed weapons permit. You better practice. And if you haven't shot your gun, and that's the first time you're going to shoot it, that's not the time to learn. You better be competent with it, because you're going to be pumped. You're going to be adrenaline. You got some crazy coming at you. You better be ready how to use it and defend yourself. Because the worst thing is you see somebody do something bad to your family, and you wish you could have stopped it. Those are just lessons. Just lessons for a guy who retired law enforcement, what I've seen, and hopefully people can learn and just passing some wisdom on what we can do.
All right.
It's awesome, man.
Are you ready?
Yeah, I'm good.
We good?
Yeah. I just you mean do a little promo on some?
Yeah, absolutely. I usually say that, obviously I'm gonna put Colby, which is everybody who watches this knows who Colby is. Colby will put the book links. Like if you send me the book links, he'll put your book links in the description.
Oh, great.
Of the video, so people can just go to the description box. They just hit the button and boom, it'll have a whole list where they can just click on it and bring you straight to your Amazon account or your your Amazon book. And
I just have an Amazon author page with all my books. I'll just send you the Amazon author page that I have. It's a great one. So I'll let the audience know also. I do also have a Amazon author page too. You can Google it or go obviously go on Amazon, which is my name. I think it's there, Ignacio Esteban. and you can see all my books, 60 books, from fiction to nonfiction. I also do fiction books also, which was fun reads. I also do pictorial books, and I think you'll really like, if you like organized crime, I have a lot to do. This is a true crime channel. I have a lot in organized crime. My personal experiences dealing with biker groups, we haven't even talked about that yet. So that could be another show down the road if you want, doing the one percenters, doing the outlaws, the Hells Angels, the Mongols. I've done books on Yakuza. I've done books on LA gangs. I was in LA for 8 months between the Bloods, the Crips, the Mexican Mafia. I've done books on MS-13, Mana Salvatrucha. So there's a lot of stuff here. If you like this stuff, obviously I've done books on the Mafia, Castro, the Mafia, and the history of the Mafia in Havana. The rise and fall of the Mafia in Havana led to a rise in Las Vegas. And I talked all the political side because of my family. They were there. They experienced it. And you see it firsthand what's going on there. So a lot of cool things. Please look it up, and have the audio stuff coming out on Audible, ATF Undercover, and hopefully to get the other books out there through Sean.
All right. Yeah, we'll definitely have to do some of those. Like actually just do a show just on that one category. You know,
Yeah.
on like one category of like the Yakuza. Do one on just like the biker gangs, like that sort of thing. That would be, because we were kind of all over the place. But yeah, that we could definitely do that.
That was fun.
Hey, if you like the video, do me a favor and hit the subscribe button, hit the bell so you get notified of videos just like this. Leave me a comment in the comment section. Also, I am going to leave all of the descriptions. Colby's going to leave all the descriptions in the description box. And I really appreciate you guys watching. And also, I've written a bunch of books that are on Amazon, Barnes & Nobles, and Audible. And I'm even going to have Colby leave several of the trailers for the books right after this, so you can watch the trailers for several of my books and go to Amazon and buy a book or buy an Audible or however, you know, or not. Listen, it's up to you, whatever. I appreciate you guys watching though, and thank you very much. Leave me a comment and I will respond to your comments. See ya.
Using forgeries and bogus identities, Matthew B. Cox, one of the most ingenious con men in history, built America's biggest banks out of millions. Despite numerous encounters with bank security, state, and federal authorities, Cox narrowly, and quite luckily, avoided capture for years. Eventually, he topped the U.S. Secret Service's most wanted list and led the U.S. Marshals, FBI, and Secret Service on a 3-year chase, while jet-setting around the world with his attractive female accomplices. Cox has been declared one of the most prolific mortgage fraud con artists of all time by CNBC's American Greed. Bloomberg Businessweek called him the mortgage industry's worst nightmare, while Dateline NBC described Cox as a gifted forger and silver-tongued liar. Playboy magazine proclaimed his scam was real estate fraud, and he was the best. Shark in the Housing Pool is Cox's exhilarating first-person account of his stranger-than-fiction story. Available now on Amazon and Audible.
Bent is the story of John J. Boziak's phenomenal life of crime. Inked from head to toe, with an addiction to strippers and fast Cadillacs, Boziak was not your typical computer geek. He was, however, one of the most cunning scammers, counterfeiters, identity thieves, and escape artists alive, and a major thorn in the side of the U.S. Secret Service as they fought a war on cybercrime. With a savant-like ability to circumvent banking security and stay one step ahead of law enforcement, Boziak made millions of dollars in the international cyber underworld, with the help of the Chinese and the Russians. Then, leaving nothing but a John Doe warrant and a cleaned-out bank account in his wake, he vanished. Boziak's stranger-than-fiction tale of ingenious scams and impossible escapes, of brazen run-ins with the law and secret desires to straighten out and settle down, makes his story a true crime con game that will keep you guessing. Bent: How a Homeless Teen Became One of the Cybercrime Industry's Most Prolific Counterfeiters. Available now on Amazon and Audible.
Buried by the U.S. government and ignored by the national media, this is the story they don't want you to know. When Frank Amadeo met with President George W. Bush at the White House to discuss NATO operations in Afghanistan, no one knew that he'd already embezzled nearly $200 million from the federal government. money he intended to use to bankroll his plan to take over the world. From Amadeo's global headquarters in the shadow of Florida's Disney World, with a nearly inexhaustible supply of the Internal Revenue Service's funds, Amadeo acquired multiple businesses, amassing a mega conglomerate. Driven by his delusions of world conquest, he negotiated the purchase of a squadron of American fighter jets and the controlling interest in a former Soviet ICBM factory. He began working to build the largest private militia on the planet, over 1 million Africans strong. Simultaneously, Amadeo hired an international black ops force to orchestrate a coup in the Congo, while plotting to take over several small Eastern European countries. The most disturbing part of it all is, had the US government not thwarted his plans, he might have just pulled it off. It's insanity, the bizarre, true story of a bipolar megalomaniac's insane plan for total world domination. Available now on Amazon and Audible.
Pierre Rossini, in the 1990s, was a 20-something-year-old Los Angeles-based drug trafficker of ecstasy and ice. He and his associates drove luxury European supercars, lived in Beverly Hills penthouses, and dated Playboy models while dodging federal indictments. Then, 2 FBI officers with the Organized Crime Drug Enforcement Task Force entered the picture. Dirty agents willing to fix cases and identify informants. Suddenly, 2 of Rossini's associates, confidential informants working with federal law enforcement, were murdered. Everyone pointed to Rossini. As his co-defendants prepared for trial, U.S. Attorney Robert Mueller sat down to debrief Rossini at Leavenworth Penitentiary, and another story emerged. A tale of FBI corruption and complicity in murder. You see, Pierre Rossini knew something that no one else knew. The truth. And Robert Mueller and the federal government have been covering it up to this very day. Devil Exposed. A twisted tale of drug trafficking, corruption, and murder in the City of Angels. Available on Amazon and Audible.
Bailout is a psychological true crime thriller that pits a narcissistic conman against an egotistical, pathological liar. Marcus Schrinker, the money manager who attempted to fake his own death during the 2008 financial crisis, is about to be released from prison, and he's ready to talk. He's ready to tell you the story no one's heard. Schrinker sits down with true crime writer Matthew B. Cox, a fellow inmate serving time for bank fraud. Schrinker lays out the details, the disgruntled clients who persecuted him for unanticipated market losses, the affair that ruined his marriage, and the treachery of his scorned wife, the woman who framed him for securities fraud, leaving him no choice but to make a bogus distress call and plunge from his multi-million-dollar private aircraft in the dead of night. The $11.1 million in life insurance, the missing $1.5 million in gold. The fact is, Schrinker wants you to think he's innocent. The problem is, Cox knows Schrinker's a pathological liar, and his story's a fabrication. As Cox subtly coaxes, cajoles, and yes, cons Schrinker into revealing his deceptions, his stranger-than-fiction life of lies slowly unravels. This is the story Schrinker didn't want you to know. Bailout: The Life and Lies of Marcus Schrinker. Available now on Barnes & Noble, Etsy, and Audible.
Matthew B. Cox is a con man, incarcerated in the Federal Bureau of Prisons for a variety of bank fraud-related scams. Despite not having a drug problem, Cox inexplicably ends up in the prison's residential drug abuse program, known as RDAP. A drug program in name only. RDAP is an invasive behavior modification therapy, specifically designed to correct the cognitive thinking errors associated with criminal behavior. The program is a non-fiction dark comedy which chronicles Cox's side-splitting journey. This first-person account is a fascinating glimpse at the survivor-like atmosphere inside of the government-sponsored rehabilitation unit. While navigating the treachery of his backstabbing peers, Cox simultaneously manipulates prison policies and the bumbling staff every step of the way. The program: How a Conman Survived the Federal Bureau of Prisons' Cult of RDAP. Available now on Amazon and Audible.
If you saw anything you like, links to all the books are in the description box.